Great. Well, again, very good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for spending your lunchtime with us. My name is Ben Espinosa. I'm with the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs, Grants Administration Division. I'm joined by two great colleagues today, Muna Ben-Buatza and Brenda Slaughter-Reynolds, who are standing by in the wings here. We are pleased to spend the next 90 minutes or so talking about our cultural grants program. We have a lot of content to cover. Our goal today is to, number one, certainly orient you with all the fine details about this funding opportunity, go over what you can expect with the application process, and then actually go through an online application so you can see what that process looks like and get some good tips about how to frame a strong proposal for this grant program. This is one of several funding opportunities offered at DCA. This is kind of we're starting to roll out all of our grant programs for the fall, the cultural grants programs, first one out the gate. We are, of course, talking about the current application cycle for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. So we are forecasting activities many months in the future for activities that can begin no sooner than July 1, 2024, and then be completed by June 30th, 2025. The Cultural Grant Program invests in free and low-cost, family-friendly, community-relevant activities and events throughout the great city of Los Angeles. We are interested in activities that really engage audiences, visitors, and tourists in LA, while at the same time offering free and low-cost access to the public and keeping our artists, creative workers, and otherwise creative economy here in LA strong and resilient. We are looking at many months in the future, so we don't know what our budget is yet for grant making. But if we look back at the last 4 years or so, this grant program's awarded around $4 to $4.5 million, which has been able to support over 350 organizations and individuals. Grants tend to average, looking back, between average grants around $10,000 to $15,000 per grantee, but they can be as small as $1,000 for very, very small organizations to as much as $35,000 plus to organizations with operating budgets way bigger than our very own grant making budget. So it's a wide assortment of organizations and a wide assortment of projects, and we're thrilled to talk to you about it today. So I think a good place to start is talk about the types of organizations who's allowed to apply for this grant program. So first and foremost, you have to have a nonprofit status. You need to be a 501c, not IRS tax exempt organization, and specifically with an arts and culture mission. So if you look at your board approved organization mission statement, you need to see something there in the first few sentences that's dedicated to delivering and providing arts and cultural services for the public. There's one exception to this. If you're a 501c nonprofit organization that doesn't have an arts or cultural focus mission statement, you can apply for a grant program if you are proposing an outdoor festival or parade where you would be carrying out the activities in partnership with arts organizations, creative collectives, and other arts experts who would otherwise curate an arts and cultural experience for your outdoor festival parade. So that's important item number one, nonprofit status. Secondly, you have to be a nonprofit organization based here in Los Angeles, and specifically within the county of Los Angeles. Our grants are funded through locally through local sources, and these are monies collected through the transient occupancy tax, the hotel bed tax, and so it's important to us to reinvest those monies back into our local region. So part of that equation is that you are a nonprofit based here in Los Angeles County. You're based here in Los Angeles County, but of course, you're proposing activities for the public that takes place within the municipal boundaries of the city of Los Angeles. So within the county of LA, of course, is a whole assortment of various municipalities and unincorporated areas. And of course, the biggest constituency is the city of LA. And we are the city of LA as a municipal funder, so we're looking for activities taking place within our city boundaries. Third important element to take away in terms of eligibility is that you are coming to us with a project that you've already done before. It's not a new idea, not a new concept, not a project seeking seed funding. You've done this activity in the past, and you're coming to us with an argument about how DCA investment can make it bigger, stronger, faster. So another important thing about this is that these grants are not meant to be used as general operating year-long programmatic support. Our grant budget and our individual grant amounts are much too small to make that sustainable. So we need you to define for us what a project is. You might be a museum gallery that mounts, 6 or 8, exhibitions a year. We hope your project to us is not going to be those 6 or 8 exhibitions. We want you to take a look at what you're to take a subset of what you do over the course of a year, and to define for us maybe it's just 1 or 2 exhibitions that you think would be a great fit for the City of LA funding. Or maybe you are a film festival who's rolling out, a whole series of screenings in the coming year, and your film festival spans, an entire month. We hope that your project for us is not the entire month-long event of activities. We would challenge you to think about what element of your film festival would be lend itself well to being framed as a project. Perhaps it's a mix of the particularly absolutely free admission events taking place in the weekends that's really geared toward families, all taking place in Los Angeles. Maybe it's a mix of crowd pleasing, features where you can really expect maximum attendance, plus a mix of more kind of contemporary avant-garde youth films where there's some experimental, content which may not be mostly well attended, but so you can start to think about how you can put together a subset of your activities for what is a project, and you're going to come to us with an argument for how DCA money can make it bigger, faster, stronger, better. And an important part of coming to us with a project you've done in the past already is that you have the ability to dazzle a peer panel of experts with the most recent year's metrics of how many people you've reached, what impact your programming has had on their lives, and how vast and wide your audience was. It's important to have those previous your project's previous iterations metrics so you can really build a strong, compelling proposal. And by the way, it's not just the metrics we're going to be interested in from the last time you did your project. We want to know about the various artists, creative workers, arts professionals that you paid. So we also want you to come to us with a project where you're paying local creative workers. And finally, there's a range of other qualifications based on the type of project you're proposing to us. I'll pause here with the eligibility requirements because it is super important. Out of, let's say, 200 proposals we may receive at an application deadline, there's always a small handful, maybe 5 to 10 proposals that the DCA grant staff has to take away from competition because they don't meet these elements. Some examples. So these are examples that you don't want to be in. You're submitting a proposal and you're not even a nonprofit. Maybe you're a commercial enterprise and you don't have an IRS tax exempt status. Or you're a really up-and-coming group of wonderful, service-oriented artists who have this great project you've done before, but you don't quite yet have your IRS tax-exempt status. Also not eligible. We've seen proposals submitted for competitions, raffle events, gala events that are not free or low cost or widely available to the public. We can't support those either. We see projects proposed for open call concepts. Oh, we're going to release an RFP. We're going to release a solicitation for artists to commission a new work. You don't have a proposal where you can tell us about the artists and what they're going to do and the topics and themes or projects going to encompass. It's not going to be able to be competed in our grant program. So try to avoid those early pitfalls when submitting a grant proposal to us. So now let's talk about some of the types of projects you're going to propose to us. The vast majority of our applicants will fall under the artistic project category. This is where you're taking your roster of a roster of professional artists, creative workers, arts administrators, technical staff, guest artists, and you're paying them to do what they do best based on their qualifications, training, talents, and expertise to put together amazing, public presentations for the public. So these are your dance concerts. These are your concert series. These are your museum exhibitions. These are your series of creative writing workshops with kids that culminates in the production of a zine and reading to the public. These are your film festivals where you're screening, wonderful works, in a variety of movie theaters across our city. So most of your projects are going to fall under this artistic project category. Secondly, another super popular category for us is our outdoor festivals and parades. And we have some tweaks to this category this year. So we're excited to roll out some adjustments and clarifications for this category. I'm excited to tell you about that. But these are outdoor events. They take place at a single public site, outdoor, like a street, corridor, an intersection, a public park, public plaza, where it's easily visible and accessible by passersby and the general public. These are events that feature a wide range and variety of acts and artists. And in fact, we expect that each year, each iteration of a festival showcases new artists, new acts as compared to prior years. In other words, we don't want your festival to be showcasing the same people over and over, year after year after year. These are events that are typically, celebrate, neighborhood cohesion and community togetherness. These are often annual, maybe semi-annual, quarterly, and can include things like art walks. So that's the type of event where you're paying, a wide variety of performing artists, visual artists, to put together an outdoor event. So this year we're categorizing our outdoor festival and parade projects into 3 tiers. And this is important because this will factor into how much you can request of the grant program towards your project. But for now, just keep in mind, we think of them in 3 categories. There are very, very large festivals where you are encompassing multiple city blocks, you're closing down an entire boulevard, where you are garnering more than 2,000 people. Those are very, very large outdoor festivals and parades. The mid-tier we're calling small. These are events where you are gathering between 500 and 2,000 people. And then we have our very, very small events, almost like pop-up events, where you're using a public park, you're using a city block intersection, and you're having an event where you're gathering 500 or fewer people. So think about the last time you did your festival, if you are a festival producer and applying in this category, because the size of your event the last time is going to factor into how much you can request in terms of a grant. Okay, so there's a couple additional categories, not as common as the artistic projects or festivals, but we still have them and we're thrilled to have them. And I'd like to talk to you about them now. The first one is something we call sequential arts and school learning, culminating in after-school public events, SailCAPE for short. These are very rigorous arts education-focused projects. In contrast to an artistic project where, say, you're doing an after-school filmmaking program, it's widely open to a wide variety of youth ages, between 5 and 10, 13, open to the general community. These SailCAPE projects are grade appropriate, sequential, California art standards aligned, multi-week sequential learning experiences. So these are often taking place during the school day. In the school, you're working with a consistent group of students in the same grade usually, where you're delivering sequential arts education. That's aligned with our visual arts and performing arts standards. And so that happens during the school day often, but these are also projects that must culminate in some sort of after school, evening, weekend activity that the general public can go and attend. Whereas I don't expect to be able to walk into a middle school and just check out, week 3 of like a puppetry workshop with a bunch of middle schoolers. I do hope I can go show up and see the culminating showcase where I get to see what kind of arts learning took place over the span of 3 or 4 months. So that's what a SailCAPE project is. And important in this category, because your proposal will be read by a team of arts education experts who they themselves be arts education specialists in our public schools, school administrators, and other arts administrators in K-12 youth education, it's important you accompany your proposal with a very detailed curriculum that outlines the in-depth learning that your project is proposed to deliver. It's a required attachment for a CLK project. Field advocacy and sector learning projects is our final project category. You're gathering artists, creative workers, arts administrators, you're getting them together. They're not performing though. They are instead convening for knowledge sharing, for an opportunity to hear from leaders in the field about what's going on in our creative sector in the region. So these are conferences, seminars, network building activities and forums. So rather than project showcasing and culminating performance, this is about knowledge building, getting our arts sector people together and engaging in activities that advance and ensure the health of our creative sector here in LA. Similarly, these are events that we would expect to be accompanied with like sample lesson plans, sample programs from prior iterations, so that you can show the peer panel a sample of the kind of learning that can take place. Okay, I'll pause here for questions, Muna and Brenda. Have there been any questions regarding eligibility or project types in the chat?
Ben. Yeah, hi, Ben. I've been answering a few questions regarding fiscal sponsorship, first-time projects. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what would be eligible as a project in terms of those two criteria?
Okay, so first-time project sounds problematic because it doesn't meet our eligibility requirement of coming to us with a project you've done before. And you're coming to us with an argument for how you can make it bigger, faster, stronger, better. You might think creatively, though, about what activities you have done in the past and to think about where that event has taken place. Have you done some sort of pilot of it in the past? And is there a case to be made for making it a more established event, public activity with some help with DCA funds? We would defer to you to tell us, even though when you say you haven't done it before, have you done other activities that are comparable that you can claim as like an initial iteration or pilot? And then with a grant proposal, you're going to figure out a way to really give it its sea legs and move on as a repeatable project year to year.
Thanks, Ben. Yes, I've asked Jordana to present some specific questions when we do go over the application specifically.
And I'll highlight again for the group, the Cultural Grants Program is one of several funding opportunities offered by the Department of Cultural Affairs. It's the first one out the gate of our application, season here in the fall. Go visit culturela.org/grants. It's the DCA website. You can get a preview of the other grant programs on offer there. Some of those, you don't have to be a 501c3 organization. You can be an individual artist proposing something that that engages in a local neighborhood community, if you have a community-based practice. If you have a brand new idea you've never done before, we have another program called the Public Space Activation Fund, if you have activities taking place outdoors. So take a look at that. And there's this webinar is not about those various programs, but all to say there are other opportunities offered from DCA, not just the Cultural Grants Program.
Hey, Ben, we have a first-time applicant, it looks like here, asking about something to make their project bigger, better, faster, stronger that would require an open call. Can you address that in terms of eligibility for applications and what we can fund?
An open call as a project element can work if the timing is such that by the time you're typing up a proposal for us to review and for the peer panel to evaluate, you can tell us about the artists who've been selected by that process. It's very difficult when you're submitting a proposal and say, oh, we have this great idea, we're going to do this open call, but I can't tell you about who's going to be selected. You're already at a disadvantage against your peer organization who has a robust list of creative workers and artists that they say they're going to be paid, and and can explain the type of activities they're going to produce, what topics and themes they're going to explore. You're already at a disadvantage if your open call has not yet taken place and you can't tell us about those important characteristics of your project. Okay. Thank you for the question, folks. Keep those questions going in the text box. I will stop again at opportune times to address any questions ahead that might come up. Let's shift gears now to talk about another important element about our cultural grants program, and that's our biannual application cycle. I don't know how to get rid of this little orange thing on the screen, so I apologize for that, folks, if you're seeing that. Zoom is still a new tool for us relatively here at Cultural Affairs, so appreciate your patience, but pardon that orange line. So in the ideal scenario, you are coming to us with a project you can do 1 year, you can repeat it again a second year, and we can continue supporting your project, your repeatable concept, year after year after year. However, we don't want you applying to us every year. We'd rather you apply to us once every other year, but only after you've submitted what we call an on-cycle grant proposal. So let me explain what that on-cycle grant proposal means. Every year, DCA supports a wide range of projects that span multiple artistic disciplines: dance, music, theater, visual arts, media arts, culture history, literary arts, etc. But we do not convene the teams of peer panel experts for each artistic discipline every year. We split it up about half. In odd calendar years like 2023 is the year we're going to convene our experts in the non-performing art forms. So our literary experts, our film media experts, our architectural design, visual arts experts, our cultural history experts, for example. So if you're submitting a proposal to us that falls under one of those categories, your proposal will in essence be read by the most appropriate people to adjudicate your proposal. And for that reason, that proposal would be an on-cycle proposal. In contrast to, say, you're submitting a proposal to us for a new theatrical production, and you want to do a 6-week run of a new musical. We're not going to convene our musical theater experts this year. We're going to convene them next year. So instead, your proposal will be read by what we call a mixed expert panel group. It'll be composed of a dance expert, a music expert, a theater expert, a multidisciplinary arts expert, and so forth. And for that reason, we're going to call your proposal an off-cycle proposal. I think a great way of illustrating this is going through a couple of examples. So let's take the example of the film festival I mentioned earlier. Their proposal is going to be adjudicated by a group of media experts this year. It's an on-cycle proposal. And let's take this example of the musical theater project. Their proposal is going to be read by a mixed panel group. It's going to be an off-cycle proposal. But what they do this year is exactly the same. They're going to submit a proposal by our September 23 deadline. And fingers crossed, they've attended a webinar and they submitted a stellar proposal and are awarded the contract for the 24-25 year. Here's where it gets different. Because the film festival folks got an on-cycle proposal, rather than submitting a new proposal this time next year in 2024, they get a break and they get to instead just submit a form saying, hey, project's going great. We are thrilled to repeat our project in concept and would love another year of funding. That's all they have to do. In contrast, our musical theater project, we're going to ask them to submit a brand new proposal. So a full new proposal in 2024, thereby getting them on cycle in 2024. And then you can see how the cycle kind of plays out in this kind of like a stepladder pattern, where an on-cycle proposal begets you 2 fiscal years of funding consideration. Okay, so that's our concept for the 2-year application cycle. And so you might be asking, oh, great, so what's on cycle this year? So as I mentioned, it's our non-performing arts focused artistic disciplines. So that's going to be our design, visual, literary arts, media arts, trad folk, festival parades, Sail Cape, and our FASL projects. So as I mentioned earlier, film festivals, literary art fairs, new museum exhibitions and installations. We're going to have a wide range of creative writing workshops, spoken word performances and readings and so forth. And next year, it will be the year we convene our experts to adjudicate dance concerts, concert series, theatrical productions, multidisciplinary projects, and so forth. You see, we have festivals and sale kit projects each year. We ask that on-cycle proposals kind of this year in 23 have our non-arts, performing arts focused projects. So like imagine filmmaking, school residencies, creative writing workshop series. Those are the types of events that we'll consider on cycle this year, otherwise off cycle. All right, I'll pause there for questions regarding our biannual application cycle. It's a lot of content. Basically, the idea is submit a proposal this year. If you're on cycle, great. If not, we're going to ask that you apply again next year with a full proposal. That's the gist of all of this, so that we can get you on a biannual reapplication cadence. Okay.
Hi,
Yes,
Ben. Just a couple. We have a question regarding the open call aspect of the program that's set, but the players keep changing. So how would that be specifically addressed in terms of moving forward? We have more questions on the matching funding. So I don't know if you want to perhaps address some of these specifically as they apply to the application, or go ahead and answer them now.
I'm curious about the open call question. I'll address matching funds in a subsequent section when we talk about funding requests. But if I understand the open call question correctly, is that I'm submitting a proposal for 1 year. How can I possibly project all my creative workers for 2 years? And the answer is, we don't expect you to project 2 years worth of creative workers. We would love for you to project at least 1 year of your artist roster, of the various creatives that are going to be paid as part of executing your project. These are 1 year proposals. And so what happens when it comes to offering you a second year of funding consideration, we ask that you can confirm for us, rather than submitting a proposal, would you be willing to repeat your project in concept for a second year of funding? So let's say, you know, your first year proposal is focused on a very specific Shakespeare production. You have your lineup of actors and whatnot. We don't expect you necessarily to do the same production for the second year, but can you do another comparable, similarly themed kind of production that's consistent with the spirit of your initial proposal? That's what we'll be asking for that second year.
Thanks,
Great,
Ben.
thanks, Ben. Michael in the chat is asking, if we apply off cycle this year, how is it determined which panel reviews our application, basically?
Right. So that's a great question. It's based on primarily the primary artistic discipline around which your proposal is framed. So this can be part of the strategic thinking on your end as you're framing a project for us. Let's say maybe you run a series of after school, performing and visual arts workshops for kids at various locations across the city. You might want to ask yourself, well, if I frame my project to be focused exclusively on printmaking, graphic design, painting, sculpture, and framing it around, let's say, 5 series of those workshops only, that's a perfect fit for our design visual arts, artistic project panel. So you would therefore be an on-cycle proposal. If on the other hand, you really, really love your percussion after school sessions, and it's the area where you feel like DCA investment's most needed, I encourage you to consider and weigh the pros and cons of submitting an off-cycle music proposal this year, and then simply submit a new proposal next year. So it's a mix in terms of the strategic thinking. Think about what's a good fit for us in terms of a project and how you're framing the scope of what your project is. And in the end, we're gonna assign it to the panel where you've selected the artistic discipline is the focus. So it's a lot of it's up to you, but we take some flexibility in assigning it to the right people to adjudicate it.
Exactly. Thank you, Ben. And on that note, Jamie was asking, what is the advantage? I think you kind of responded to the question, is there an advantage to apply off cycle versus waiting until next year? Another advantage would be that you can, if you're applying off cycle, you will receive panel feedback in a few months. Another question, Ben, is how many grants can an organization apply for?
Thank you for the question. That reminds me, I should have covered that earlier. And the answer is, you can, at any one time, any nonprofit organization can have as many as 2 cultural grants program contracts with us, as long as one of those 2 is an outdoor festival parade project. So if you're only in the business of artistic projects, you do all of your events, you're self-producing, you're curating everything, you're really eligible to apply for one artistic project proposal. If on the other hand, you have this wonderful, program, artistic program, where you showcase a series of artists in your gallery space, but you also produce like an outdoor block party where you're showcasing local musicians, local visual artists. You're doing a range of activations on the street around your building where you're bringing in food trucks, merchants, vendors, etc. You are eligible to apply for a second contract, and that would be an outdoor festival parade. So the answer is up to 2, as long as one of those 2 is an outdoor festival parade project.
And one more quick question here regarding the prior project that's been done before, requesting DCA funding to repeat those services, bigger, better, faster. Is there a location required for that prior project to have taken place? If it took place outside of LA County, is that okay?
It is eligible if you are an LA County-based organization who's done an iteration of this event outside of LA City, and you're suggesting a DCA grant will help migrate it into LA City. That is a sound argument for a proposal. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
One more question then before we move on to the next section. Dance is saying that we usually apply for the artistic project for exhibitions. We have a cultural history exhibition coming up. Would that qualify?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A culture history exhibition is a perfect example of an artistic project. Okay. All right. So having spoken about who's eligible, what type of projects you can propose, and what our application framework looks like, let's talk about what's really important for us as a municipal funder. And because you're attending a webinar today, you're already a step in advance of the rest of our applicants. You're savvy grant writers, and you're of course looking for those intersections of your organization's mission, the programming you do, and the things that are really, really important to us as a funder. So first and foremost, free or low-cost arts activities that are open to the public. We want to be able to brag about the great work you're doing on the DCA grantee calendar, on our social media feeds, and our newsletter, and our website. We want to advertise all these wonderful free or low-cost things that Angelinos, their kids, friends, and families can go and check out. So you need to prioritize events in your portfolio for a project for us that you can claim as free or low cost, accessible to the public. Activities taking place in arts underserved council districts. So let's take a look at the LA City map. Let's take a peek at it right here. You can see it goes all the way up to the northwest, like West Hills, Northridge, to Pacoima, Silmar, all the way south to San Pedro. For us, you might imagine the concentration of arts and cultural opportunities in our city are right there in the center where all the freeways meet as it happens. We have far fewer arts organizations based in, or far fewer projects taking place in these areas in the far-flung parts of our city. So the Northwest San Fernando Valley, Central San Fernando Valley, like Van Nuys and Panorama City, and the far North San Fernando Valley, like Silmar, Tahunga. Those are areas where we have far fewer arts activities. And same can be said for South Los Angeles. That's an area under the 10 freeway, Crenshaw, historic South Central, and more areas in the far west side. And so things like areas like Venice, Mar Vista, areas abutting, Topanga. Those are areas where we're interested in more activities. So to the extent possible, where you can propose projects taking place in these areas where you have authentic relationships with communities and partners there and audiences there, it can be to your benefit to find activities that are in these arts underserved council districts. For an interactive map, I have a link there where you can access tiny URL/LA Council districts. And if you want more information about a specific address, we have a neighborhood info tool you can also visit, where you can confirm what city council district it's in. So we want to prioritize areas in these circled areas. Also, we care about events that get lots of butts in the seats. We want projects that have really strong community, resonance and relevance, so that people are showing up to the events that you're proposing. We want 100% capacity, enrollment, and attendance. So think about when you're thinking about projects for us to pitch in your proposal, which are the events that you've had a really wonderful track record of excellent, stellar public attendance. And finally, we think of our grant program as a job creator, job sustainer here in our Los Angeles creative economy. So we want you to come to us with the projects where you can really tell us about the various people you're paying with a proposed DCA grant and other funding sources. We want to support jobs here in the city. So, and these are specifically arts jobs. So think about what work you do where you can tell us about a wide range of people who will be getting paid. And with these 4 priorities, there are some key tips I'd like to share with you. First, jobs is very important. So think about, if you're thinking about a project for us and you can't tell us at least 60% of the artist creative roster about who would be getting paid, it's probably not the best fit for this grant program. Think about something else that you're doing where you can tell us about the various people you'd be getting, who'd be paid as part of the project. Low-cost arts activities. We define low cost as what one might pay for a commercial movie ticket. So when you're putting together your project budgets for how to put together a program where you can charge the public either nothing or a very small, modest fee to come see the great work you're doing, be thoughtful about the project you're building, and know that our peer panelists fully expect that there can be as much as 20% of overhead or indirect costs built into your project budget to make that happen. We want admission to the public to be free or low cost, but we understand it may cost you a bit more to make that happen for the public. Okay, and the geography, very important. You might be an organization that has activities throughout the city of LA. It would be to your advantage if you can take a subset of all those activities and focus on the areas where you would get the most geography points for us. So let's say you're an after-school program and you have sites in Hollywood, you have sites in downtown LA, in Echo Park and Los Feliz, but you also have sites in Northridge, in Canoga Park, in Crenshaw. Your project, everything else being equal, if it's exclusively on Northridge, Crenshaw, and Canoga Park, would do much better geographically in our evaluation. So be strategic about this. Find that intersection between the work that you're already doing and the priorities for us as a funder. Okay, we haven't spoken about grant money yet, and that's because we haven't spoken about our SMU Data Arts. For all our applicants here who are arts and cultural organizations, who are, in other words, if you're not a non-arts organization proposing an outdoor festival, you need to have an updated cultural data survey in your SMU Data Arts profile. If you haven't already, please go to culturaldata.org, log into your account, complete the latest fiscal year survey that you can for your organization, depends on when your fiscal year ended. You're applying in 2023, so our panelists are going to expect to see your cultural data information. They would love to see 22 if possible, but certainly no later than 2021. We want to see 2 years or more of your workforce metrics, of your programmatic metrics, your financials, and importantly, how much your total revenue less in kind was for the most recently completed fiscal year, because that's an important number that will be used to assess how much you can ask through the grant program. Now, there's a couple exceptions to our cultural data requirement. That's if you are a non-arts organization. Let's say you're a business improvement district or a social service agency, a health services agency. You're exempt from cultural data. We're not considered an arts organization, but you're producing an outdoor festival or event. In lieu of a data arts report, you would get a chance to submit to us instead your most recently filed 990 with the IRS, so we can assess your organization budget size based on your total revenue from the prior year. The other exception to our data arts report requirement is our very, very small emerging arts organizations. These are organizations with less than 2 years of operating history, or rather 2 years or less of operating history, and have budgets of less than $20,000 a year. In lieu of a data arts report, you can submit a 990 and a list of financial statements signed by your board treasurer. So if you haven't started this, do it now. This can be a bear. My understanding is the SMU has really tried hard to streamline their survey to make it easier for organizations for filling out. So we'll go through an example of how you'll get that data report during the application side of our presentation. But all to say, do this now so you have a sense of what your total revenue less in kind was from the last fiscal year. And that's important because now we can talk about grant requests. It's a lot of text on this. I know. We have a lot of text here because it's a lot of detail. When you ask the question, how much can I ask? It depends. Depends on your budget size, depends on your revenue, depends on your project type, and it depends what the size of your proposed budget is. So the first thing I'll highlight is our one-to-one matching requirement. A DCA grant will never pay for 100% of your proposed project. It can never exceed more than half of the total cost of your project because we expect you to match our grant at least 1-to-1. So let's say you're proposing a $20,000 block party. The total amount of the grant request can never be more than $10,000 because we have because of that one-to-one matching requirement. The match can be demonstrated with a mix of cash equivalent sources, and donated in-kind services or materials. We do want that you meet your proposed matching requirement with at least half cash, though. So let's take that $20,000 project, for example, again. Bare minimum, we want you to demonstrate is $5,000 in cash matching, and then 5 donated in-kind service materials. So think hard about the various supporters you have for your work, your county contribution, county grant from Los Angeles County, State Arts Council, private philanthropy, private donations, individual donations, and again, a mix of donated services and materials as well. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about how much you can ask. Our very, very large organizations, those with budgets far bigger than our grant budget, can request up to 4% of their last operating revenues, up to a maximum $80,000. Mid-sized organizations, this makes up the bulk of our grantee portfolio. These are organizations with budgets greater than 75K consistently. You can request up to 10% of your last reported cash revenues, up to 40K. Small organizations, these are organizations that have operating budgets between $10,000 and $100,000. You can request up to 20% of that last cash revenue dollar figure, up to $10,000. And then our very, very small groups, operating budgets of less than 20K, you can request for a very modest grant of $1,500 to $3,000 for an artistic project. In all of these cases, remember, your grant request can never be more than 50% of your total project budget. Festivals and parades. This is where the really good news is for our festival producers. We tried to make it easier for you to request the maximum possible, primarily based on your most recent attendance. It's not so much tied into your operating budget anymore. So basically, if you are a super large festival that spans multiple city blocks, getting more than 2,000 people showing up, we want you to be able to ask for up to $40,000 towards that event. And so to request a maximum of $40,000, it's important that your project budget be at least $80,000, right? So that's the logic there. And then the logic follows as well for our small festivals, for events that have between 500 and 1,000 and 2,000 people, $15,000 towards that event. And our very, very small pop-ups of 500 or fewer people, up to 6K. So if you're a very, very small organization, like an emerging arts organization, but you have you rolled out, a $10,000 event, a pop-up event, you can request technically up to 6K if everything else is on the up and up in terms of your project budget and so forth. Any questions there? Okay, not hearing any. It's a lot of content here, but here's the good news. If once you've done a bit of homework, you've identified your cash operating revenues for the most recently completed fiscal year. You have a sense of what your project budget's going to be, and you have a sense of your project category. We have a tool on our website where you can access, and it'll calculate that for you based on those details. Let's take a peek at what that looks like. So this is the grants, the guidelines. You probably saw this before. This is how you registered for our webinar today. You can access a allowable grant request calculator on the main page here, or at the grant guidelines section for calculating a maximum request. Let's go through a sample just so we can see what this looks like. If you click on it, yada, 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 we're going to click continue. Let's take the example where I'm a mid-sized organization with, let's say, an $80,000 operating budget in my fiscal 22, which closed in December. So I did my data arts report. I did all of that. Or if I didn't do a data arts report, I'm a non-arts nonprofit doing an outdoor festival or parade. I have my IRS 990. I show that I have an $85,000 total revenue from the 2022 calendar year. I'll enter that there. Great. Next, I'm gonna do a series of 12 filmmaking workshops with kids, and it's going to culminate in a really fun community screening event. That's an artistic project in the media arts category, and I expect this project to cost about 90. Well, that's more in my budget. I'm about $40,000. I click the calculate max allowable, and then based on that information, I'm informed the maximum I can request for the grant program is $8,500. And here's the explanation for that. I'm allowed to request up to 10% of my operating budget, up to a maximum of 40, where the expenses cannot be more than 50% of the total budget. Okay, so I hope that tool is useful. We've had some good feedback with this tool. It's helped kind of demystify that very text-heavy slide we were just looking at. Okay, so take advantage of that, but it does require you to do some homework first, have a sense of how much your project costs, and have a sense of what your operating budget was from the most recently completed fiscal year. All right. Okay, so now I think we're ready to apply. And to access the application, you go back to those guidelines and we have an apply button there. You'll find that everything takes place online. SurveyMonkey Apply. We'll go over what that platform looks like momentarily. But here's a snapshot of the timeline of what we're looking at. We're in step 1 now. You're going to create a SurveyMonkey Apply account. And then by September 8, pardon me, you will have completed the online proposal and click submit. We ask for you to do a second step and to mail us a hard copy of the text components of your proposal. It's a softer postmark deadline of the following Wednesday, I believe. And then you won't hear from us for a while because between September and May and June, the DCA grant staff is convening those peer panel experts and asking them to read all of the many proposals that have been submitted. And then we won't know what our grant budget will be until probably April of 2024. So that's why you won't hear from us until May or June with the status of your grant proposal. And of course, we contract in July 2024, May, June, July 2024. So your projects can begin as early as 2024, July, going into the following June. All right, I'm going to pause for questions before we shift gears and talk about SurveyMonkey Apply. How's it looking?
Hi, Ben. Could you just review for people who like to audit their financials prior to submitting them to Data Arts, other ways that the organizations can flesh out the picture so that the panelists can have a full
Sure.
a full picture of the most recent financial data for the organization?
Great. Understandable that full audits can delay the timing of completion of the data arts survey. In those instances, please do provide a data arts report that has at least 2 years of your most recently completed surveys. And then you'll have an opportunity in the application to add a narrative explanation why it might not be the most up to date. And so you can explain middle of an audit, and you can upload a snapshot of where your organization is financially with a set of board treasurer signed financial statements, balance statement, profit loss statement, and so forth. However, when it comes to calculating your maximum allowable grant requests, we default to whatever that number is in your data arts report. So for better or worse, that's the number that's going to be used in calculating what your maximum allowable is. But you can certainly provide the context for why you might not have the most current data art survey using that, and you can convey that as context for the peer panel.
Thanks, Ben. So just to be clear, if someone had a windfall year in 2021, but their financials have gone down in 2022, it would not be best to use the 2021 financials, given that we want the most current financial picture.
When it comes to calculating your maximum allowable request, it's based on the data arts report. But we ask that you be thoughtful about your grant request to us. You need not necessarily request the maximum allowable. Understanding there might have been some more of a financial difficulty following, in this example, 2021. You want to make sure that you are assuaging any fears on the peer panel. Well, they went down 21, but yet they're going to propose a grant budget that maximizes the grant request. You want consistency in the narrative there, and thoughtfulness in how you're packaging your project and the accompanying project budget.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Let's go take a peek at SurveyMonkey Apply. Thank you for bearing with us, folks. I know it's a lot of information. The good news is, for those who are brand new to this program with us, we do very, very little changes year to year. So once you have one or two of these under your belt, you can be a pro, because we're super predictable that way. So give me one moment here. Let me shift my shared screen. Hey. Let's go back to our grant guidelines. You will have clicked on the apply button here, and you have found a link to SurveyMonkey Apply. There it is. But before even doing that, great to do a complete read of the guidelines, so you have a preview of what you can be expected to submit on SurveyMonkey Apply. But also importantly, if you go under the guidelines and look under the peer panel review process, it's always good to understand what exactly you're going to be adjudicated against. So any savvy grant writer will know you're in a way kind of writing toward the evaluation criteria, and this is no exception. So here's a preview of what our peer panelists are asked to rate your proposals around. Okay. Read on for more details on how we convene these wonderful people, but basically they're going to get score sheets that asks them to score your proposal across these several criteria. It's primarily the same. There's one difference if you are a very large organization or if you're proposing outdoor festival events. We take artistic merit out of the equation in those instances. Small, mid-sized organizations proposing artistic discipline-focused projects have artistic merit factored in there. Okay, so let me go over these real fast. Admin capability. This is a demonstration to the panel that you have good business sense and logic, and are ready to execute on the project that you are putting forth. You demonstrate great admin capability through sound financials. You have the mathematics in your project budget that makes sense. You are including a list of key staff and artists who collectively demonstrate great experience and training and expertise for administering a project of whatever it is that you're proposing. And there's also a big factor here of the fit and finish, I like to say, of your overall proposal. Little things like typos, grammatical errors, inadvertently truncated responses because you went over the character count, connectedness between the story you're telling and the words versus the numbers and the artistic samples. You want all of those to be going back together and telling the same story, working together. You don't want to be talking about workshops in your narrative, and then you're putting artistic samples of stuff that has nothing to do with workshops. You don't want a budget that talks about one story of expenses related to things that were never referenced in the narrative. You want that cohesiveness. So fit and finish, business expertise, mathematical logic in your budget. Artistic merit, this is, the quality and training as demonstrated in your proposed list of artists' CVs, their resumes, the artistic samples, the videos or images that you're including in your proposal to demonstrate really sound artistic quality. Geography, this is something that the panelists don't have as much sway on. This is something that the DCA grant staff actually scores. So out of a 100-point maximum, we take 10 points based on where your proposed locations are. So going back to that map I spoke about earlier, all things else being equal, the project that's proposing an exclusively South LA series of events versus one that is focused in Hollywood or more broadly across the city, the former is going to do better in this geography element. Important also here is the story about the people you're serving. So the demographic element as well, socioeconomic qualities of the youth, of the adults that you're serving, factors into this criterion also. Ideas and/or innovation. We're very intentional about the word here, or. We care about really avant-garde, exciting new concepts that panelists may not have seen, but we also want to honor projects that really embrace traditional execution, really solid, good ideas that are a winner from year to year to year. So this is about elements of that in your proposed project. Impact, we want to hear about what kind of story and impact you've had on your planned audience and community members, as demonstrated by metrics that you've collected in the past around audience engagement, testimonials you received from prior project participants, really robust, detailed evaluation systems that you're employing in your rollout of your project to identify areas for improvement and to course correct over the course of a project. Those are things that really would impact the panel's read of your project's impact. And finally, relevance. And this is relevance to a couple of things. Relevance to your proposed audience and community. Are you proposing community relevant themes, topics that resonate with the audience that you're proposing? How relevant is it to our priorities as a funder? And those are the things that I rattled off earlier. Geography, free and low cost activities, how you're paying artists and creative workers, etc. And so those are the key elements that you want to be having in the back of your mind as you're putting together your proposal. Everything you're typing in, all the numbers you're putting in, should somehow map back to one or more of these scoring criteria. So to the extent that you can have those in back of mind, it would really help ensure that you're putting together a proposal that puts your best foot forward. Okay, so let's go into SurveyMonkey Apply. After that big buildup, we're going to click on this link to dca-la-smapply.org. It's a third-party platform, and we've been using this for the past 3 years now for our grant proposal requirements. So when you click on that, the first thing you'll see is our open call for the Cultural Grant Program. 24-25, great, excellent. And if you are new to this platform altogether, the very first thing you're going to do is click on the green register button there on the upper right-hand corner. You click on that. Important that you register yourself as an organization, because as you know, our Cultural Grants Program is open to organizations, not individual people. So make sure to click that box. After you've created an account, you can go ahead and log in. I have a sample account here we can play with. And by default, because I seem to be a very active user on SurveyMonkey Apply, it appears, in fact, I've applied to a series of individual artist grants. So if I click on programs right now, I'm not going to see the Cultural Grant Program apply button because it's telling me organizations can apply. So before you call the DCA grant staff, make sure, double check, please, that you've set up your account to also include that organization. And if you have if you also have an account as an individual artist, that's okay too. You can toggle between which hat you're wearing by going in the upper left-hand corner here and selecting either your individual name or the organization you represent. So if you click on the organization you represent, voila, you will see under the programs button here, a green apply button. Okay. So that once you click on that green apply button, it'll open up a brand new proposal for you. I have one pending, so let me go to my pending one we can look at together. There it is. And when you click on apply, you're going to be brought to this page. You're going to have and basically list all of your to-do items. This is your task list. It's your checklist of things to do. Each of these items under the your tasks are the things that comprise a full proposal. Things that have this grayed circle indicates something that you have not yet started. Something with a half moon icon shows that you've started it, saved changes, but have not completed it. And anything with a satisfying green check mark is something that you've completed. You won't be able to submit this until all the required elements are checked off. Let's start off in the very top. Organizational grant proposal is the meatiest part of your grant application. We'll spend most of our time on this one. And the proposal itself consists of 3 pages. First page is some basic information about your organization and your project. Second is all the very text-heavy components of your proposal, your narrative elements. And then finally, the number story. We want to see your project income and project expenses, 2 items that compose the project budget. Okay, some quick kind of like navigational orientation stuff here. You can cycle through pages using the buttons on the bottom. There are buttons here, next, and if I was on the first page, there's a previous button. But before clicking on next or previous, always a good idea to save your work, so you can always have it back there. Alternately, I always recommend folks to have a preview of all the questions that you'll be asked to prepare, and to get a preview of those questions, you can click on this link. It'll give you a version of this where you can jot down your notes and your responses in advance. I recommend doing this like a Microsoft Word file, especially when it comes to the narrative elements. Let's get a preview of that. Some narrative elements here. You can prepare that in Microsoft Word file. That way you have a backup copy. You can take advantage of all the text editing, copy editing tools like word check, spell check, grammar check, word counts. Those are really useful. And so that way, by the time you get to this task on SurveyMonkey Applies, it really becomes a cut and paste affair. Make it very easy for yourself. All right, so some basic information about your organization. These are pretty self-explanatory. The things I'll call out is, please enter your official IRS name. So pull out that IRS tax exempt notification letter. Please enter exactly how your name shows up on that letter. All caps, please. Makes it easy for us to process on our end. Basic information about your contact. Physical location, importantly, needs to be in Los Angeles County. So if the first instinct you type in here is somewhere in the Bay Area, New York City, I wonder if your organization is eligible. It's important that you're putting in the physical address here that reflects your organization's headquarters in Los Angeles County. Some basic contact information, email address, and so forth. Give us a heads up about if you took advantage of any of our proposal preparation resources. We're trying to take better stock of what resources folks have taken advantage of. It'll help us shape our offerings in the future. So you will definitely check off the box. You attended an in-person grants workshop, and thank you for doing that. Second question, project type. So most of you will be submitting artistic projects. Again, those are the wide range of dance, music, theater, visual arts, media arts, literary arts presentations, free or low cost presentations to the public. We have a box for our SailCAPE projects. These are the very rigorous arts education projects taking place at school that culminates in some sort of after school or evening performance for the rest of the public. FASL projects, and our 3 festival tiers. When you select an artistic project or a SailCAPE project, be prepared to specify the artistic discipline. This is going to make a very strong influence into what kind of panel you're going to get adjudicated in, and whether or not we consider your proposal to be on cycle or off cycle, based on those categories we spoke about earlier today. When you select the festival category, you're going to be prompted with another question here that just double checks that you're meeting our requirement that you are proposing an outdoor event that has a rotating roster of artists and music and acts. And so we ask you to specify is if you compare your list of proposed acts for the upcoming year to the last couple of years, what would you say? Is it about 30 to 40% new artists? 41, 50? Is it majority new acts, all up and coming, emerging groups here in LA? Give us an indication of how much you've thought about that. But important, if you don't feel comfortable saying at least 30% are new, maybe your festival is not the best fit for this grant program. Budget size and category, this kind of plays with having done your work with data arts. You have a sense of what your last fiscal year cash revenues were. There's some intentional overlap here between our small and mid and large. Part of that is we want you to claim what size you want to be competing in. Our panelists are sensitive to whether or not they're comparing a small organization to or an emerging arts organization to a mid-sized organization. And so in our review and our discussion about grant proposals, we keep the size of the organization as how the applicant sees themselves as a consideration when comparing proposals to one another. Grant amount request, you will have taken advantage of our allowable grant request calculator to double confirm the number you're putting here is allowable. A common application pitfall is that applicants are putting a number here that's just totally fantastical, that is not rooted in our calculation requirements. So just double confirm that you're making a grant request that's allowable based on your organization size and the type of project you're proposing. Indication, double confirm that you did data arts, and then that cash revenue figure over here.
Yes, Ben, that's an important distinction, and we had a question about that earlier. So one item you're entering is your operational budget, and the other item you're entering is your request for your project, which will be no more than 50% of your project budget.
Yeah. That's a good flag for you as you're filling out this form. If you find that if your grant amount request, if you double it, is pretty darn close to your total cash revenue number, it's probably the case you're proposing to us more of a program and not so much of a project. I would challenge you to go back to work with your programs team to think about all the activities you were thinking of framing this proposal around, and to see if there's a strategic subset of activities that you can define as a much more cohesive, competitive project for DCA funding.
Ben, if I could just piggyback on the festival new acts,
Sure.
3040. So if I would just recommend to organizations looking at the festival as their project, if they find they don't qualify under the eligibility of this festival criteria, do consider multidisciplinary, visual arts. There are other categories in which your project would be eligible. So if you find you think you have a theater proposal, but in fact it does not qualify, we would encourage you to look at the other disciplines and categories in which the project would qualify.
And that presumes, of course, that you are a nonprofit arts organization. If you're a business improvement district, a social service agency not involved in the arts, the only category you are eligible for is an outdoor festival or parade. Okay, please indicate for us just what you're saying your project is really responding to, some of these 4 key things for the projects we fund. Is it really promoting community dialogue, lifelong learning, cultural arts jobs, free or low cost social activities? Pick 2 that you feel like really relate to the project you're proposing. Next couple of questions revolve around geography. Number 1 is headquarters. Your organization's headquarters should be based in either one of the 15 LA City Council district or somewhere else in Los Angeles County. So if you're not in one of the 15 county district, that's okay. You might be based in Pasadena, Santa Monica, Culver City, Altadena. That's not a problem here. Just click that box and indicate where. Could be the name of a municipality or a community in unincorporated LA County. The second question asks what specific council districts your activities are going to take place. Now, this one has to be one of our 15 council districts because we are a city funder. So make sure to double check the addresses of all your various project locations to make sure they're within the city of LA. And remember, you shouldn't really be picking more than 4 or 5 for this question. Any more than that, it suggests there's an opportunity for you to be a little bit more thoughtful again about taking a look at your proposed activities and taking a subset for something that could be better framed as a project. We want you to focus and be thoughtful about where your activities are going to take place so that you're not really proposing more than 4 or 5 council districts. The exception is if you're a media focused project, your broadcasting services reaching a citywide audience, you might want to select the all button. because you're reaching a primarily online virtual audience. And I'll flag here, by the way, something that we call out for anything that's involving online activities, especially exclusively online activities, is that your activities still need to be produced within the city of LA. So if you're broadcasting a Zoom panel of experts, we want to make sure that panel is the facilities and technology where that panel is being broadcast, the workers who are facilitating that are based here in LA City. It's our one way to keep track of our local grant funds reaching local activities here. Project start and end dates. Again, an eligible project for this proposal starts at July 1, 2024, all the way to June 30, 2025. Please don't enter those two dates as your project start and end dates. Again, we're not a program or a general operating funder, we're a project funder. And for us, the vast majority of our projects are completed between 3, 4, or 5 months. And we ask that you think about, when is the start of you engaging your artists, you're paying them in creative work and presentation, and when are you presenting to the audiences? That's the good date to put as your start and end date. Public impact and proposed services, the very important number for us. This will factor in later to something we're going to call a cost per head. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we need to have an estimate of the number of people you're engaging as workshop participants, and the number of people you're going to be engaging as part of the culminating showcase and event that's open to the general public. So this is important for us because we need to understand that how much of a reach your project is going to have. So project participants can include your time as administrators, your staff time, your contract worker time, as well as your workshop participants and event participants. And then the audience members, of course, is oftentimes much larger and is the attendance for the general public event. Give us some check marks of any special constituencies that you are planning to serve through your project. Be thoughtful about this as well. The boxes you select here, our panel will expect you to elaborate on what specific outreach, targeted programming, and special attention you're giving to making sure that your project reaches these sensitive, often fragile groups. Okay, that's page 1, and it looks like I forgot something. And SurveyMonkey Apply will tell you if you forgot to respond to a question. Oh, I did the festival, and I'm going to do 30-40%. Yeah, great. Okay, so second page is all the text-heavy narrative stuff. Oh my goodness, I forgot something else. All right, I forgot to answer this one. Okay, that should do it. Let's see. All right, so the narrative elements of our proposal. And this is definitely a section where I recommend you prepare your responses in advance on Microsoft Word, so you can take advantage of all those copy editing tools I mentioned earlier. Some of these are questions you're going to be accustomed to seeing. In fact, the ones with little starburst icons are questions that a range of local municipal funders are questions that they include in their grant proposals. So if you apply to Pasadena, West Hollywood, Culver City, Santa Monica, their grant proposal has a very similar, if not the exact same question. So all that to say, you might already have a good response for this buried somewhere in your files. So you should feel free to reference that when you prepare your response to this. Mission is a very important question for us. This is how we're verifying that you are, in fact, an arts or cultural mission-focused nonprofit organization. And a common pitfall we see with some applicants' proposals is they're not including their overall organization's board-approved mission statement. They may instead include a vision or specific objectives or goals of a program the organization administers, but not the organization's overall mission. We're interested in the organization's overall mission statement here. And it's oftentimes very short, 1, 2, 3 sentences. And if your mission for whatever reason is not short like that, try to pull out the key elements of your mission statement so that the panel immediately understands the purpose of your 501c3 nonprofit organization.
Should be the board-approved mission statement.
Exactly. Give the panel a quick snapshot of where your organization has been in the last few years, where you're at today, and with an emphasis on recent. We're thrilled to support many organizations who have long storied histories here in Los Angeles. Maybe a quick sentence about your founding, but emphasize things that have happened in the last 2 or 3 years, especially with COVID. These last, kind of in our rearview mirror now. Panelists are particularly interested to understand how your organization's fared through that incredible challenge. And then, of course, planning and leadership. Tell us about where your organization wants to be in the near future. So, and it gives you an opportunity to tell us about the key staff leadership you have on at your organization, board leadership, particular expertise in your board that you think is particularly important, and think about where your organization wants to be in the coming years. Gives the panelists a sense of your goals as an organization. Tell us a little about your audience. This is who you plan to reach and serve with your planned project activities. And this is where you think about those checkboxes you marked in that previous page about special populations in our city. If you're focusing project is focused on reaching out to seniors and elders here in our city, tell us about what's particularly characteristic about them, how you reach them, where you find them, what special expertise you have in your staff and a roster of creative workers who are really suited to work with such a population. An opportunity to connect those dots for a panel. These are your special constituencies, and this is how you reach out to them and make sure that they're served. Give us a little bit about your artistic policy. Give the panelists an understanding of how artistic decisions are being made. Is it, is it one voice up on top? Is it more of a panel process? Is there some sort of element of an open call that's factored into artistic decision making? And if so, how do you ensure you are achieving the goals and with respect to diversion, equity, inclusion, and selection of artists and respondents for any type of open call process? This is where you would want to talk about that. And then finally, the meaty part of what exactly you're going to propose to do with DCA money. So we've given you a lot of kind of like a lead material here, because we want you to be very thoughtful about your very first 1, 2, 3 sentences. For folks who are coming back to DCA to reapply, you have a bit of a cheat sheet, because you can take a look at your most recently executed grant contract with us, and you're looking at that service language we include in your what we call the Appendix B in your grant contract. It often starts off with something like to produce and present 15 community workshops that culminates in 2 public presentations. Something very dry and plain language like that. That's what we're looking for this first sentence. We want you to summarize for us, for the panel, what exactly are you going to do? If you are a visual arts organization, you're going to mount 3 LA themed shows featuring contemporary practicing LA artists. It might read as something like, we request DCA funding to produce and present 4 new visual arts exhibitions that will be available to the public for 3 weeks. So what the theme you should be getting from these first few samples is that we're looking for something very scalable and clear. If you're new to the world of government grants, the grant amount that you request, very unlikely you will receive 100% of it. More likely, you'll receive a small percentage of it. Based on our funding in recent years and the level of competition, the strongest proposals probably get just above 50 or 60% of their grant requests. So what we would like to do when it comes to contracting is to scale your deliverables for us commensurately. So if in the example of proposing 4 new visual arts exhibitions, and we're going to recommend you for about half of what you requested, we'd love to be able to say, oh, well, we'd like to make a contract with you for two new visual arts exhibitions. So it's in your advantage to propose to us a project that's scalable, so that it lends itself well to contracting and success if recommended for funding. The rest of your project descriptions should really lay out the technical specs of what you're planning to do. Timing of the year, the different venues, the topics and themes you're going to explore, how it relates to your target audience, maybe a rough outline of timeline of when you're going to roll key project elements out. When's marketing going to happen? When's outreach and enrollment going to happen? And when does production happen? When do the culminating shows or exhibitions take place? It's put on your lawyer and journalist hat here. Dry but yet clear and concise language is what really wins. The dilemma we get a lot, very, very, very often, is language that's way too vague. Way too vague. We're gonna do a new series, a new concert series in South LA. Well, you're gonna tell us what possible programs, which composers you're going to feature, what are the topics and themes. You want to give the peer panel something to adjudicate here. Remember, think about those scoring criteria. How relevant is this to the community? What's the impact? What's the potential impact it's going to have? They won't be able to assess that if you're not giving them details.
And Ben, this would be a great place to highlight the difference in project and program. Again, for the applicants, we don't need to hear all about the program. We want to hear about the specific project.
Yeah. Yeah. I brought up a sample earlier. Maybe you're an organization that runs a series of after-school workshops all throughout Los Angeles. Your first sentence should be something along the lines of, we request USAID funding to produce and present three visual arts themed after-school youth workshop series that culminates in 3 public showcases and exhibitions to take place in the West Valley in Woodland Hills. You know, that's a nice subset of the other things your organization does throughout the course of the year. It positions you well, number one, geographically. It's scalable, and it happens to be a theme that would be on cycle this year because it's a visual arts focus year. 3,000 character limit, folks. So please be thoughtful. And another reason to really come up with a project that's a subset of all the wonderful work your organization does. It allows you to delve more deeply into that subset of activities rather than providing a big, broad snapshot of all the work you're doing. The next section is when you get a chance to brag about all the wonderful impact that your project has done the last time you did it. So tell us about attendance, tell us about the stories of the kids and the families who participated. Tell us about what kind of qualitative or quantitative survey strategies and tools you employed that demonstrate your project is working the way you want it to be working. So this is where you get to tell the panel all about the specific tools and strategies you're using to ensure great success and to provide examples of what that success looks like. More bragging opportunity. Tell us about the wonderful staff and artists that make up your team, not just the full-time salaried employees at your organization, but also the planned roster of creative workers you plan to bring on through payment of a contract or honoraria in the coming year. A common misconception is just to list out your staff and employees to your organization. You want to give the panel a nice robust list of all the various paid creative workers that would be employed as part of making this project happen. And don't be shy with this section. Add as many people you feel like is appropriate for really demonstrating the wide expertise, talent, and experience you're putting forth, and will be able to deploy if recommended for funding. And you even have the opportunity to add more than 5 people, so don't be shy to use that if needed. Okay, that's the narrative section of the proposal. The next page is all the numbers. So this is the budget portion. So for us, a project budget is one where you're showing us the total cost of producing what it is you're proposing to do, and you're going to show us the associated revenues to make that happen. Those numbers should be equal. You want to give us a total expenses for your project, and you want to give us a total revenue for making that project happen. And again, this is another good check. If you find that your total project budget is very similar to your overall organization budget that you saw in your data arts report, very unlikely you've put together a project budget. More likely you've put together an organization budget, and that can be a problem. That's a common application pitfall I hope everyone here who is attending will avoid doing. We want to know only the costs for producing the activities you've outlined in your narrative. So going back to the example of after-school visual arts workshops, I want to understand the total cost of producing just those visual arts workshops out in the valley, not your entire organization's budget. Okay. So we start off with
All
the
right.
income.
So just to highlight again, this is not an operational budget. This is a project budget.
That's exactly right. And we're starting off on the revenue side. If you're doing a live performance, there might be admissions there. If you put a dollar amount here, please utilize the budget notes. In all cases, for every number you're entering, I highly recommend you include a budget note to let the panel understand your thinking about how that you derive that number. So if I'm putting admissions for a live performance, for example, number one, I want to be able to show the panel that I'm thinking about free or low cost admission. I might want to tell them this is a heavily discounted rate of $5 per person, at times anticipated attendance at a certain rate. Give them that brief arithmetic so they understand where that number is coming from. There's opportunity for other revenue sources such as earned income, like merchandise sales, food and concessions. You'll have a much more thoroughly fleshed out budget. This is just a sample. This is very light in details. You will do better than this. And
Panel
then
really appreciates budget notes.
absolutely, panelists love that. You don't want to leave them asking, oh, where did this number come from? Oh, how does that number make sense? Oh, that doesn't seem reasonable. You want to utilize every tool you have at your disposal as a grant writer to illuminate how you've arrived at these numbers. And then the next section, very important section, is a contributed income section. And this is important because this is where the DCA grant request fits in. Common pitfall, we want you to avoid this, is to forget, is not remembering to add your DCA grant requests in the budget line for city government resources, city government revenue. So we have a red line here asking you to double check that the number you've included on page 1, you've included here as well. We've tried to find a way to have that automatically pipe in. We haven't figured out how to make that happen yet based on this platform, but it's something we continue to pursue with our service provider. But so we're reminding you to please take that manual step to make sure city government requests is here. But also outline your other sources of funding. Remember, there's a one-to-one matching requirement for this grant program. This is how much did I say this product budget is? I think 50K. I expect to see at least 50K in other sources. I know if this is a $50,000 budget, I'm requesting 25K in DCA money. I expect to see at least 25K in other sources of funding. Board member contributions, individual donations, private philanthropy, State Arts Council, all those are allowable sources of contributing funds. Okay, great. And so there it is, $50,000. And it's also helpful if it's not already reflected in your budget notes to add a brief narrative here to the panel outlining, what other the specific sources of your other matching funds. You can even outline it as those that have already been secured, they're projected, highly optimistic to get. Anything that really assures the panel that, hey, this is a project that has some demonstrated commitment from a wide variety of support is very well reviewed. The panel gets very hesitant when the DCA share of the grant budget is not accompanied by a robust set of other funders. It speaks to the level of readiness your project would have if recommended for funding, and it assuages all the fears that panelists can have if they're looking at a project budget where there's not a wider bench of project supporters. Okay. Expense side. This is where you really want to break down the math for how you're paying people. And as I mentioned earlier, we like to support arts jobs. So tell us about the folks on your payroll, how much they're paid, what percentage of your annual salary you're going to attribute toward this project, because as a project, we're not paying for the entire annual salary of a specific employee, right? So think about that. And to the extent that you can specify what percentage you've accounted for towards this project, helps show the panel you're thinking about that. Tell us about the various non-salary creative workers you're going to bring on and pay through contract or honoraria. And bonus, you can let the panel know that, this is an important part of my project budget. And in fact, I'm going to be dedicating my DCA grant money towards covering this. Shows the panel that you're prioritizing DCA grant monies toward the payment of salaries, and shows that you're being thoughtful about our priorities as a funder. Shows that relevance to our funding priorities. And also there in your project expenses, it can have things that are not allowable uses of grant funds. For example, things you can't use DCA money for include food, travel, refreshments, hospitality. But we understand some projects do require those as important parts of as an important project expense. Okay to include that in your project budget, but very savvy to call out that this will be covered by another matching source, just so you're showing the panelists that you know that DCA money can't go towards such an expense. Okay, we're paying people, great, excellent. And that's another check for yourself. If you've put together your expense budget and you don't really have any artists that you're paying, probably not a good fit for an artistic project. So again, take stock of the various activities you're proposing that you can propose for DCA, and find the ones where you can really tell us about people being paid. Great. Okay, so after filling out the project budget, SurveyMonkey Apply gives you this calculation that's called a cost per head ratio. And to be clear, this is the project cost per head ratio. If you take the total expenses of your project, in this example, $50,000, and you divide it by the number of people you serve, and that was a question that was asked on the first page, right? Number of people you're engaging with, your audience size. If you do that division, it gives you a cost per head. And in this case, it's about $19 per person. At DCA, we support a wide range of projects and variety of level of engagement. On one end of the spectrum, we may support, that 2,000 people outdoor festival parade that's reaching thousands of people. But you show up, it's free. I experienced the event for an hour and I go home. That might have a cost per head at that size and scale of less than $5 per person. On the other end of the spectrum, we may have a SailCape project. It's a multi-month residency working with middle school kids, getting them to learn the fundamentals of, storytelling, filmmaking, and then ultimately editing something they can screen for their friends and family in a fun community event. That cost per head ratio for that project at that size and scale can easily be well over $100 per person. What I'm saying is that we accept projects across that wide spectrum, but it's incumbent upon you, the grant writer, to make the case to the panel why it ought to be that price. So this is a project, let's say this is focused on just a visual arts exhibition. I'm gonna mount a couple of shows. We're gonna have hundreds of people show up over the course of a month. It'll be about $20 a person. That sounds about right. That's kind of like within the ballpark of the projects we see across our portfolio. So if on the other hand, you did this math for a project like that, it was about $100, revisit your project math, in terms of your audience, the cost, to get more what we say right-sized for a city investment. Okay. SurveyMonkey Apply will check for you if your expenses and revenue do not match. They'll give you a chance to correct it. As I mentioned, those two numbers should match. And once you've completed the financials, you can mark that complete and your proposal is complete. If I mark that complete, technical difficulty here. And folks, we are at 90 minutes. If you have to leave, do know we will be posting a recording of this session online on the DCA YouTube channel and the program guidelines page where you registered for this workshop, so you can review this later. It's a lot of content, and I expect we'll probably need another 15 minutes or so. So if you're able to stay, please do. What happened here? I'm trying to complete my proposal. I did. So once you click on complete, you'll get a green check mark there, indicating that's been completed. Everything else is a little bit more straightforward. It won't take us much time at all. The grant proposal was the meatiest part. The Data Arts Funder Report is where you'll upload a copy of the PDF you download from from SMU Data Arts. And here is a quick overview of what that can look like. when you log on to oh gosh, oh my goodness. When you go to the SMU Data Arts website, you're going to click login because you've already completed your surveys. You'll log in using your SMU Data Arts login. You should see in your survey section in this upper left-hand portion, all the recent surveys you've completed. You can see we can do better than us, better than what you're going to do, because we have some outdated years here. The latest one here is 2018. We hope yours will have at least 21. 22 would be even wonderful. But once you've completed your surveys, you can now go to the section that's highlighted as funder reports and grants. If you click on that link, you can search for a variety of grant makers across the country. You're talking to the LA City Cultural Affairs Department, so you can type in the search query something like cultural affairs and make sure that you find this listed here after clicking find. We should be just under one of the first results, in this case, right under City Culver City. Click on City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs, click on the view button, and then you will see an opportunity to view and generate a report. And you'll see before you click on that green hyperlink, the years that this report will be framed around. And again, this is an outdated example. Yours will have better, more recent years. When you click on that button, it'll download a PDF. Save this to your computer somewhere with all your other grant proposal files. You know it's the right report because you can see the DCA egg logo in the upper right-hand corner. That's a common application pitfall, folks. Folks are downloading LA County's data arts report. They're downloading City of West Hollywood's data arts report and uploading it as part of their proposal to us. Please avoid that. That jeopardizes how your grant is grant allowed is calculated. It hampers our panelists' ability to compare your report consistently across the other applicants, because the beauty of having the same report for everybody is that the data is presented in a predictable, consistent way. And so you're shooting yourself in the foot if you inadvertently upload the wrong report. So save that PDF somewhere on your computer. And it is that PDF you're going to upload in this section. Now, if you are a small emerging organization with fewer than 2 years of history, if you are a non-arts nonprofit proposing an outdoor festival parade who is not an arts organization, this is where you can instead upload a 990 and or a financial summary signed by your board treasurer. Okay, so that's the one exception to this data arts report. This is where you would upload it. Okay, once you upload that, it marks it as complete. We can move on to the next items in our to-do list. This is that section we referenced earlier. If for whatever reason you have an old data arts report that you're showing to the panel, you have some weird up and downs between fiscal years that really merit an explanation, this is an opportunity to provide a brief narrative about those variances and to upload, again, a board treasurer signed set of financial statements to give the panelists some context of where you are today. Complete. Next item is an easy one. Search your files for a copy of your organization's IRS designation letter. Please upload a copy of that here. I've uploaded that. Marks that as complete. Excellent. Board of Directors list. This one is a gray uncompleted, so I'll show you how to do this. We understand that many organizations have a prepared list of board of directors. It's in a nice flashy PDF already prepared, ready to go. Please avoid uploading that here. That's another common application pitfall. Please avoid doing that. Instead, download our Excel worksheet. Similar logic for the data arts report. We want our panelists to see board information for all our applicants in a consistent, predictable way. And it allows you to share kind of the professional and organization affiliations your various board members have, as a way of demonstrating, administrative capacity and, diversity and perspectives and so forth. Make sure your board list is listing at least the minimum required by, state and federal law. I think California state requires at least 3, right, Brenda? Correct me on this one.
Sorry, Ben, 3 what?
What's California state requirements for minimum board membership for
Yes, 3,
Thank you.
minimum of 3.
you.
Not including participants. This program does not allow for payment to board members to
Absolutely.
participate in the project.
Great. Thank you. All right. So that's our board list. Artistic work sample is super important. So you have an opportunity to showcase to the panel artistic samples of your prior event, prior activities via 10 static images or 3 URLs. So oftentimes the default for videos. Should be an opportunity you should really relish, because because our panelists love it, because they get to take their eyes off the screen and off the paper from reading words and start to actually experience and see art. So think about showcasing some sample materials that map to your project narrative. If your project is about a film festival artistic project where you're showcasing some really cool avant-garde LA themed films, that is accompanied by a robust set of Q&A, audience talkbacks that happens. Try to have your samples kind of mimic that. Give the panelists a sense of what maybe like a quick 5 minute sample of a really stellar exemplar film that was showcased in your film festival, and as well as a video of the highly engaging audience talkback where they can see an audience, capacity audience, really thoughtfully engaging with the creative workers and artists on stage. This is a year we have a lot of museums, visual arts, architectural design applicants coming in. Oftentimes static images, high quality images work beautifully. But if you're gonna do images, let me go back to that section here. I need to edit this. That's another kind of like a logistical thing here. If you mark something as complete and you need to edit it, you gotta click on the 3 dots in the upper right hand section of that section to click on edit, so you can modify your submissions. So with images, you click on the images button, it'll prompt you for I made a mistake here. What did I do? I do images.
And just to let you all know, if you are a SailCape applicant, it's a great idea to have a video of your teaching artist instructing. Other design visual applicants, you may want to have a video of a gallery opening, etc., showing or demonstrating a talk back with the artist, something that can give a full picture of your project, either through links or video, what is best suited to your project.
And with images, great idea to follow the general guidelines here of an 8x10 sized image, high quality at 72 plus DPI. On SurveyMonkey Apply, our panelists will scroll through the images in a way, it's a carousel type presentation. So you might want to, take a snapshot of a work from afar, then do a very detailed close-up to highlight detail and texture as necessary. So a variety and strategic use, curated selection of images you want to showcase to the panel is a good idea. If you're going the route of sharing links, Brenda shared some great notes there about showcasing various elements of the project you're proposing. Panelists like experiencing or seeing samples that kind of to the best possible way replicate the experience of being there at your event. Splashy, highly edited, kind of like marketing type sizzle reels they can be okay if it's one of the 3 links you're providing, but oftentimes more impactful is like having an uninterrupted 2-3 minute sitting in the audience experience of a talk back, of seeing a teaching artist facilitate a lesson, walking through a gallery space, seeing the audience attending, giving them a sense of what the experience is like if they were there too. Okay, let me mark this as, oh goodness. Let me go back to, Go back to links. And a couple of notes, if providing links, you can be very creative at what you provide here. You can link to a Vimeo, YouTube link, certainly. Ideally, it's not going to be password protected. You just want to make this as easy as possible for the panelists. They can click on the link. They'll see the 2 to 3 minute segment you prepared for them. And that's it. You could also upload a link to a Dropbox or a PowerPoint slide deck with a curated set of images that way. It could be to a web page. Just know that in general, we advise our panelists not to spend more than 5-10 minutes in the artistic samples section of a proposal. So be thoughtful of that time limitation we're asking of our panelists. Let me just put a placeholder text here. Oh gosh. Again, utilize the text fields for adding some contextual notes for what the panelists are expected to see. If you're including a video that's not edited, you might want to add a start time and the end time, really nudging them to see the exact section you'd like them to observe. Okay, I've marked that complete. Home stretch, folks. A couple more items here, and it's the supplementary material section. This is where you get to upload a series of attachments. Attachment A is where you're going to outline on a list. You can format this on your own. Keep it very simple. We want to understand the proposed locations of your activities. The venue's name, the address, council district, name of the person that you work with there, and the number of years you presented to that at that space. It gives the panelists a sense of your track record of carrying out activities at a location. Again, speaks to readiness and past performance history. It's okay if it's a brand new location. Be upfront with that in that section as well. This is also a section where you can articulate to the panel your strategy if you're doing online virtual activities. We need you to be able to carry out such a project while also being able to collect meaningful metrics about who's accessing and engaging with your work, so that you can tell a story back to DCA about how you reach a city audience. Prior year paid artists. This is kind of like a nice complementary to that list of and roster of artists you've included in your proposal. You're giving panelists a sense of the caliber and quality of creative workers you've paid in the last time you ran this project. It's a nice comparison to who you're proposing to work with again for the year ahead. And importantly, for our festival projects, this is a way of substantiating the element of, featuring and showcasing a rotating set of acts and artists. Recent press material, please find some unsolicited third-party outside voice who covered your project the last time it took place. If recent press material cannot be gotten, do look for samples of independent journalism. That works okay. We've had folks upload really robust lists of like Yelp reviews of like a nonprofit gallery space or art space that they have. An unsolicited letter from someone who participated or attended your event also can fill in if recent press material is hard to come by. Curriculum and lesson plans. Attachment D, if you're doing a Sail Cape project, absolute necessity to upload a sample curriculum showcasing the deep learning that will take place in your project. This is where our arts experts, art specialists would be looking for California art standards alignment. So this is a chance to showcase to them that you have that expertise with your program of delivering a Sail Cape project. If you're not a Sail Cape project, maybe you are an after schools workshop series, you're doing a skill-based learning for adults or seniors, you're doing a FASL conference, seminar, a big convening, still take advantage of this upload opportunity to showcase a sample lesson plan, a sample program that you can show the panel to demonstrate the level and rigor of learning and information exchange that you are proposing in your project. The last items are optional, but as any savvy grant writer knows, anything optional you should definitely take advantage of if you possibly can. Attachment E is asking for a list of non-arts partners that you work with in carrying out your project. Panelists like to see, collaboration with other neighborhood community stakeholders in carrying out a community-based public-facing event. So are there social service agencies you work with? Are there particular interest groups that you're working in that tie into the special populations you serve, that are playing important roles in carrying out your project? Provide a list of those non-arts partners here. Okay. And finally, letter recommendation. Can be so surprising how often applicants choose not to upload a chance to include another outside voice, testifying to how their project and program is so valuable, impactful, and life-changing. So this is another opportunity to include another unsolicited testimonial from a past participant or attendee. If you're doing a program that is focused on like career building, skills building, for kids or for early career arts professionals, having a testimonial of how your program impacted them, how it led to their success today, is a great way of showcasing to the panel about the quality of your project. Okay, mark that complete. Our supplementary materials section is completed. Finally, the last couple of items are optional, but we do ask that you consider filling them out. We ask for estimated service metrics of your organization. Gives us a snapshot of kind of like the racial diversity makeup of your organization, anticipated like performance metrics, things that we use in our end that we do not share with the panel, just to have a better sense of our local creative economy and our organizations here in LA. And also a process evaluation form, much the same way we're encouraging you to build in strategies to evaluate and assess your programming through surveys and other feedback tools. We ask for your feedback as well for the work that we're doing today. We want all of our applicants to come forth with some really fabulous projects presented in the most compelling, cogent, effective way possible. And we are interested in making this process easier every year and improving the resources we provide to you as the grant preparers so that you are successful. So any feedback, positive, candid, critical, is welcome. So please take a moment to share that with us also. Once you have a full palette of green check marks here, this button that was previously gray is now green, and you can click submit. Before submitting, always review. Double check your materials for those common pitfalls we spoke about. Little things like typos, grammatical errors, inadvertently truncated narrative sections. You accidentally uploaded West Hollywood's data funders report. Your expense budget doesn't match up exactly as your revenue budget. The links that you included in your artistic samples all are easily accessible and are working. Those little things, the last things you can just double check before you click submit. In fact, ask a coworker, a colleague in your organization to offer another pair of eyes. You're taking the time for this webinar. That means you're not going to be scrambling the last minute to submit this at midnight. So I hope you'll have that time built in for that double check before you click submit. Once you click submit, you're going to get an automatically generated email confirming that the proposal has been received electronically, but you'll get the instructions in that email for a couple more steps. We do ask for the text components of your proposal to be mailed to us in hard copy. Please make sure that's mailed to us by the postmark deadline of the 13th September. And then that will officially mark your application as submitted. All right, so that was a lot of content, folks. It's just about 2 o'clock. We can pause here for more questions. I'll ask Brenda and Muna to share anything in the text, and we can open it up to popcorn question and answer.
Sure. Just like to say thank you, Ben, for this robust explanation and terrific overview. All three of us are available by email, telephone to answer any questions. We would love to have you all submit successful applications, and to avoid any pitfalls, feel free to follow up with us if we didn't answer your questions directly in this webinar. So I would invite you all to take yourselves off mute and ask away. If you have any questions, we'll stay around for a few minutes.
Oh my, could we have been that thorough? I don't believe it.
Well, we did have a robust chat going on, Ben, so
Okay,
we
good.
did answer quite a few questions along the way. I was just offering it up to people to take themselves off of mute and ask any specific questions pertinent to their
absolutely.
organization or their application or their project,
Sure.
financial, narrative,
Excellent.
artistic, any questions at all.
Hi, Tanisha.
Hi,
Hi,
Tanisha.
Tanisha.
It's so much information. I think that's why there's no questions, because it's just, I'm like, oh my God.
It is.
But we will be able to, because I feel like I just need to look at it and pause it and, so it will be available later.
We're going to post it on. Can we get a link in the chat there of the training webpage? It's where you click to register for our webinar. We're going to upload a link to that, the recording of today's session there. So yes, absolutely. We want this available to you as a resource.
Okay, thanks. Because yeah, that was a lot.
Yes, and also you can follow up with us directly if you have any questions specific to your proposal.
Okay, thank you. Oh, one thing I didn't see because I got in a little late. Can we apply for multiple things, or we can only apply for one thing?
Yeah.
One
Thanks for the-
artistic project and one festival project.
Yeah. And Tanisha, I know that you represent an arts organization in South LA. And by virtue of you being a nonprofit arts organization, you're eligible to apply for two proposals. So artistic project as well as an outdoor festival parade.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay. And Beth, we'll get that recording up as soon as we can. We're gonna do some polish to it and then we'll pop it online.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're not hearing any additional questions. I think this is as good as time as any to, let's call it quits for the day. 2-hour lunch. Wow, hats off to all of you for who were able to stick around to the end. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your thoughtfulness on behalf of DCA's grants team. We thank you for working with us today to make sure that you're putting forth your best foot for this grant program. Have a great day, everybody. Take care now.
Thank you,
Thanks for
everyone.
listening. Bye.